Hassan Nasrallah reached the peak of his popularity after the war with Israel in 2006. He was seen as a hero, not just in Lebanon, but beyond. Standing up to Israel is what defined him and his Iranian-backed group for years. But that changed when Hezbollah sent fighters to Syria, when an uprising began threatening President Bashar al-Assad's rule.
The resistance can't stand with its arms folded while its back's broken. If Syria falls in the hands of the US, the Israelis and the Takfiris, then the resistance will be besieged.
This was a turning point. Nasrallah was no longer seen as a leader of a resistance movement, but a leader of a Shia party fighting for Iranian interests. He was labeled a terrorist by Arab countries. Even before involvement in the war in Syria, Nasrallah failed to convince many in the Sunni Muslim Arab world that his movement was not behind the assassination of Lebanon's former Prime Minister Rafik al-Hariri in 2005. An international tribunal indicted 4 members of the group. One was later convicted. Despite this, Nasrallah continued to enjoy backing from his support base, mainly Lebanon's Shias, who revered him as a leader and religious figurehead. He was Hezbollah's longest-serving Secretary General, taking over at the age of 32 when his predecessor, Abbas al-Musawi, was killed by Israeli missiles in 1992. In power for nearly 30 years, Nasrallah has long been seen as a target for assassination by Israel, who, along with the United States, has designated Hezbollah a terrorist organization. That's why he rarely made public appearances and delivered speeches on television instead. He played a big role in Hezbollah's transformation from a raw group during the civil war in Lebanon in the 1980s to a military force stronger than the army and a political party stronger than the state. Nasrallah, who received religious education in Iran, has been described as the most powerful figure in Lebanon without holding public office. His critics say his political muscle came from the group's weapons, which were used against domestic opponents in 2008.
Giving up Hezbollah's weapons now, under this government, under this regime, means leaving Lebanon exposed before Israel.
It was an accusation Nasrallah would repeatedly make against those demanding Hezbollah's disarmament. He protected whatever power the group gained over the decades. While doing so, public criticism heightened, especially when he tried to undercut the nationwide protest movement that called for a strong state in a new political order.
We're against the government's resignation because we will face a huge void. It could take 1 or 2 years to form a government, and once it's formed, it'll be made up of the same political forces.
Nasrallah's supporters saw him as a defender of the rights of Shias, but his critics said he was Iran's man who never shied away from showing allegiance to Tehran and its religious authority. Hezbollah faced one of its biggest challenges after Nasrallah announced the group opened up a front against Israel to help relieve pressure on its ally Hamas in Gaza in October 2023. The group suffered losses after months of cross-border fighting and Israeli attacks that targeted significant figures in the movement, but Nasrallah remained defiant. He has been described as the personification of Hezbollah, and while the group is organized and unified, a leadership change is unlikely to have wide-ranging implications. But it's lost a commander who was charismatic and whose influence extended far beyond Lebanon.